This is Beering Ain't Easy. Do you spend all week thinking about what new beer you'll try next? Then yeah, this podcast is for you. Come join us while we try new beers, share our ratings, debate craft beer culture, and in the process, throw a few jabs at ourselves. So crack one if you got one, and turn it up.
Welcome to Beer and Ain't Easy, episode 12.
The Dirty Dozen.
Dirty Dozen.
It can only happen once.
All right. Let's move past the Dirty Dozen.
So last week was the epic episode 11 Houston Hops episode where we put 5 Houston IPAs to the test in a blind taste testing to figure out which one was the top.
That was the most fun beer experiment I've ever done.
No question. That was amazing.
That was so much fun. I really encourage, if any of our listeners did not participate in that experiment while they were listening, it will be a blast for you to go backwards and do that.
Especially if you didn't agree with our picks, just try it yourself. You will never know till you try. Speaking of which, not knowing, I feel like there was a pretty bold statement you had made in the last episode at the very beginning. And
what was that?
Let me play it back for the folks real quick.
Oh, okay. And I'm going to make fun of him forever if he picks Karbach as his favorite beer.
So how do you feel about that statement, now that we've had a week to think about it?
Well, I got to give a little background on that statement. I thought it would be hilarious if you picked Karbach, not if I picked Karbach.
Double standards.
Well, you're the one that's always hating on Karbach, and I'm not a Karbach hater. And in fact, as I proved last week, I think they make a good IPA.
What's funny is when you picked it, I was doing little dances. I was like, I'm going to have so much fun with this. Just laying on Adam on how he picked Hopadillo. And then I started thinking about it. And I was like, all of us in the Houston area enjoyed Karbach before they were bought out by InBev, Anheuser-Busch. We thought it was a great brewery. And then all of a sudden they sold out and everyone and it's not like the beer's different. It's we just completely just bagged on them ever since. So it's
the beer snob took over at that point.
Yeah. I mean, to think about it, you can buy so much more Karbach Hopadillo for your $1 than you can for all the other crap we're drinking.
Yeah. So I just proved to myself, if I'm buying a local Houston flagship IPA, I'm getting the cheaper Karbach Hopadillo.
I'm proud of you for that.
Well, I'm officially above you now.
I don't know. You may have lost some listeners when you picked Hopadillo. So, one other thing statistically that I had to notice out of that. So, Ryan, who did a much better job at picking the beers, other than his favorite mini boss, of course.
Which was awesome.
But he picked all the other beers correctly. Between you and I picked 1 beer correct. You picked 0 beers correct. So between the two of us, we were 1 for 10.
It could be worse is my only takeaway from that.
Could have been an offer.
Yeah. Drew, what are we going to talk about today?
Today, we are going to go behind the scenes of the Beering Ain't Easy podcast.
God damn, I need IPA.
We basically don't have qualifications.
The Untappd ratings on this beer are just impressive. I don't know what they are off the top of my head.
It's kind of a Bush League description.
Take care of that, you little sound bitch.
Episode 3. So this is the episode where we give you a view of what goes on behind the mics on the Beering Ain't Easy podcast.
A little sneak peek, if you will. Really, the first thing that we got to talk about behind the scenes is preparation levels.
Or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof. Or the contrast between the two of our preparation levels.
Yeah. What is yours? Because I know, but I think the listeners deserve to know too.
I'm an on-the-fly kind of guy. I don't need a lot of prep time to BS.
I walked in today for this episode And Adam's like, I don't know what the fuck we're talking about today. True story.
Drew puts together all the episodes and notes and the agenda for the episode. And I provide entertainment to the audience.
What you meant by that is I'm the creative genius behind the episode and lay out the structure. And
so now you know when we have stupid fucking episodes, who is at fault.
I think that's a pretty good strategy is like if you just don't prep, you can take no accountability for the episode.
But if things are funny on the fly, then we know why.
So before we go too far deep behind the scenes, I think we need to crack a beer.
I hear you. We need to crack one. So you go ahead and crack your beer.
Gladly.
So we got Reticulum is the name of the beer. A hazy double IPA with South African hops. This is from Sigma Brewing Company out of Houston, Texas.
I feel like I got to talk a little bit about Sigma because
Hold on. I got to crack my beer.
So I feel like people outside of the Houston area may or may not have heard of Sigma. It's not, it's not a giant brewery. They're still building a pretty loyal fan base, but they've made some pretty damn good beers and they are heating up in the Houston area. There's a lot of hype starting to build, new hype. But what I love about Sigma right now is they have this series of beers, including this Reticulum, that have a theme around space and constellations, and they have really cool can art. This is a far out beer, bro.
Hold on a second. What the hell did you just say?
I said it's a far out beer, bro.
Broski. Dropping the broskies.
So getting back on track, I think if we're going to talk behind the scenes, we have to talk about what roles and responsibilities we take on the podcast.
Well, if we're going to talk about ours and ours, I think I have to open with the most important responsibility of any podcast, the opening.
It's kind of funny with the opening story because when we first did the podcast, I think both of us had in our mind that we were both going to be the opener.
You had every freaking chance to be the opener, and you choked.
I don't think you ever really gave me the chance to be the opener.
No. The first episode we ever recorded was Sour Curious, and you tried to open it, and you fumbled all over the fucking place.
That may be true, but but I like how you just come in zero prep and you're like, I'm going to close this bitch.
I wanted you to be the opener.
Yes,
I really did. It's just unfortunate that you couldn't take advantage of the opportunity.
So you got the opener. Do you have anything else that you do for this podcast?
Oh yeah. The second most important part of a podcast is I close it, and I bring the audience home every friggin' time.
You're like, I think you guys are tired of hearing us, so see you next week.
Hey man, if I was the filler man, I would be a little salty towards the opener and closer too. But I mean, someone's got to open us, someone's got to close us, and someone's got to fill us. And you're doing your best at filling.
So not only do I fill all the creative content, but I also do a little sound work on the side.
The official term for that position that Drew fills is sound bitch.
Actually, I prefer to think of it as the producer. I produce our content.
So there's kind of like a 3-position title hierarchy. So Drew is a wannabe producer. He was originally just demoted to sound engineer, and that was an epic fail. And so now he has been demoted to sound bitch.
Yeah, let me just talk a little bit about the producer's corner here, like what I have to deal with on a weekly basis. So let me tell you what gets cut out of this episode, and I'll throw some shade on myself here too. So first with me, when I'm going through the cuts on our episode, I do stumble over some words, and I usually have to cut out, my brain will be thinking one word and like 3 different words will come out. And most of those I get to cut out. But there is one that I got to share that slipped through the cracks that we let air on our episode.
What?
That was episode 3 when I was talking about your wife, Jody.
Oh, that was a fucking classic.
So we were talking about, Adam was talking about his dirty secrets. He was blabbing on about how he's never talked about his dirty secrets with Jody. And in my head, I was thinking, oh, she's going to kill you when you get home. But what came out of my mouth was, rest in peace, Jody. And my wife, like, she doesn't listen to many of my podcasts, but she was doing me a solid and she listened to a few of them and she happened to listen to that one and she paused it. And I didn't know she was listening to that one. And she looked at me and she's like, you just killed Jody on the podcast. Your 3 listeners that are listening think that Jody is dead.
Rest in peace, Meredith.
And Meredith said, you better not kill me on our podcast. So I'm probably going to have to edit that out.
I'm waiting for the perfect time to off Meredith on the podcast, just out of spite for what you've done to my wife.
Yeah. I did. Didn't you get some flowers after episode 3?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was what I cut on myself. But what I have to cut out of Adam are 2 things. One of them is he starts taking these incredibly long gaps in between his words. So he'll be like, today, ... we're going to, I have to like compress his voice so it's not a 40-minute to 70-minute podcast episode.
Well, that is probably a function of my lack of preparation. Is where I...
Oh yeah, you got the brain. Your gears are going.
Yeah, so like unlike you, I have not thought and typed out every word I plan to say on the podcast, and so I'm doing everything on the fly. So I'm coming up with original shit on the fly.
OG shit.
OG, priceless, opening quality, closing quality shit on the fly.
So the second thing that I take out of yours is these unnecessary bumps into the microphone. So you probably have listened and you're like, who's the sound guy in this? There's all this shit. Like people like, that sounds like someone just punched the mic. And like one time Adam even like clapped his hands when he was talking. I was like, what are you doing? Why do you clap while you're talking? And so I'm like trying to figure out ways to like edit out all these random bumps or text messages. Like we had to completely redo part of an episode because he got like 3 text messages during the damn thing.
So I think this brings to point a topic that I need to bring the audience in and see whose side they're on. So Drew is always getting mad like, oh, the sound quality sucks. And I'm like, no one gives a shit about the sound quality on a podcast. Like they're listening to it in their car on their drive to work. Like they don't notice if I bump the mic.
I think it's a thing. I've read many articles about people that will listen to podcasts and they turn it off because they're like, oh, these guys sound like a bunch of freaking amateurs.
That article was written by 0.00001% of the population who are sound bitches on their own podcasts. But the other 99.9999% of the population that doesn't give a shit about it.
You fall in that category.
I absolutely fall into that category.
Regardless of percentage levels.
All right. So let's talk about more responsibilities.
I think the one that you latched onto, which I'm glad you latched onto at first, but I've been trying to, edge my way into it a little bit. Has to be social media manager.
I consider myself the director of marketing.
You know what's great about you just talking yourself up about being the social media manager is that we've had some pretty epic social media fails since we've started this thing, which I don't have to take credit for because you're the director with full accountability.
Damn it.
Tell me about some of those fails. I want to hear.
We had this great idea to join all these Facebook beer groups as Beering Ain't Easy. And so we've posted some stuff here and there. And we thought when we posted, things would just fucking take off. I don't know what the hell we were thinking.
We thought we were the most clever dudes in the freaking world.
Yeah, I mean, we thought we had this master plan no one had ever thought of before. And so we thought when we posted these funny memes in these beer groups, that like people would be like, oh my God, you guys are so fucking funny. I want to follow your Facebook page. I want to follow your Instagram page, and I want to follow your podcast and download every single episode from now until forever.
Yeah. But what did we really get on a few of those posts?
Crickets. Crickets was probably a benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
The description.
Someone like accidentally hit a like.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Like Adam's no lie there. When we did our football episode, like I have this group, it's called Texags. It's an A&M football forum. And I was like, you know what? If I throw out a reference to Johnny Football and I talk about the Aggies in a podcast, people are like trolling that site. Like, I mean, I had like over 1,000 people see it. Not one person like interacted with it. They just let me down.
And that is exactly why I don't let you do social media.
So what's funny about that, because I consider myself the creative genius behind our episodes, I also have like a healthy love of memes. And so in my spare time, I like to create just a shitload of memes that I think would be good for this podcast. And I put it in the social media folder for our social media director to consider for use.
And I do consider them for use.
He shoots down every single one of them. Like my memes, like what is the problem with my memes? I need to understand.
Oh my God. It would be easier for me to explain what is not the problem with your memes. So like Drew and I are like complete opposites in terms of what we look for in a meme. Like I look for it to be like relatable to like the highest percentage of the population, super simple. Someone can glance at it in 0.2 seconds and be like, yeah, that's funny. And like Drew has these like
really well thought out memes.
Well thought out. Like you need to study that bitch for a half hour to understand where it's going and how you get the humor out of it.
They're complex. You have to really think, before you get it.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you brought up that your memes are simple. It's like you pick like Kevin from The Office or something like dumbass that everyone recognizes.
Everyone thinks Kevin is funny. That meme that I made on Kevin, that shit was funny. Answer the question. Was that funny?
I thought it was funny, but it was also very simple. But I like the word simple that you use, because one of the that particular meme with Kevin, you posted it on one of these mentioned Facebook groups, and they actually pulled that post from their group and they sent us a reply, and it said, why was it removed? Because we like people talking about craft beer. We don't like low effort memes. It's a low blow.
Dagger. I was so pissed that Drew got to that notification before me. I
couldn't delete it?
I never would have let him fucking know about that.
It made my whole day. Man, what's funny is that out of these like 400 memes that I flooded his social media folder, he's ignored every single one of them. But he happened to post one for beer politics about buying beer before noon, and he posted it, and I saw it, and I texted him immediately, and I was like, you did one of my memes. I was like so excited.
I was like, damn it, I didn't know that was your meme.
He literally texted me back. It was like, I had no idea that was your meme. Yeah. Otherwise, I would have never posted it.
I thought you stole that from the internet.
No, that was all me. That's right up here.
So I think we're leaving out one of the most important responsibilities of this podcast.
What is that?
Procurement.
Oh, yeah. Getting the good stuff.
Getting the good stuff. And I think that goes without saying that I primarily fill the role of procurement.
You've done a pretty good job on that, but I've been holding my own lately.
I don't know that I would say you've been holding your own. I think you've had some contribution.
It's kind of tough when you're doing the content, the sound, the production,
the filling,
and then at the same time, I'm expected to go get the beer too. Where am I got hours in the day, man? But I did, for the record, I was in charge of the procurement of Sigma, and I was only going there for maybe 1 4-pack, and I came back with like 6 of them because that's what happens.
That's the life.
Yeah, that's the procurement life.
Yeah, that's the life that I would say that I've chosen, but it's really chosen me.
You didn't choose the thug life. The thug life chose you.
The thug life chose me. I will say that one benefit of this podcast that I didn't really think about that much when we started the podcast is like the quality of beer that I've drank on and off the podcast has escalated like 10 times since this podcast
No question.
started.
I feel like when it comes to going to buy those new beers, it's like you have the angel and the devil on your shoulder. And like in the past, before the podcast, it'd be like, oh, you're tired. You don't want to drive somewhere to go get that new beer. And then you wouldn't go. But now it's like, well, it could be good for the podcast. So it's just that little nudge that's all it took for us to hit the next level of beer quality.
That is absolutely true.
So speaking of good quality beers, you think we're ready to talk about the one we got sitting in front of us?
I think the audience is getting sick of listening to our bullshit.
Let's bring on those ratings. All right. So just to remind everyone what we're drinking tonight, we are drinking Reticulum. It's a hazy double IPA by Sigma Brewing Company with South African hops. And those hops are the African Queen and the Southern Star, which that's what really drew me to this beer. I'm like, I've never had a freaking beer with African hops.
I had no idea what African hops even meant.
But what were you smelling? What were you tasting on this thing?
So I'm just going to start off saying this is the most interesting hazy IPA I've ever had. And so when I smelled it, it smelled nothing like any IPA or hazy IPA I've ever smelled. And in fact, I actually got like a very subtle blueberry smell.
Yeah? I didn't get blueberry, but I got fruity pebbles, which is kind of weird. But I mean, it is completely different than what you would typically get.
Very, very unique smell. And I mean, really like smell, visual, taste, all of them super abnormal for a hazy IPA.
On the visuals, like what are you talking about different on this one?
This one to me, I mean, it's like a little hazier than a Pilsner, but like to me, it's closer to a Pilsner than it is to a hazy on the visual.
Yeah, and what's crazy, you look at this beer, it's coming in at 8.8% alcohol. And that was one of the things that jumped out to me is like, this is the least 9% alcohol beer that I've had. Like this one would definitely sneak up on you.
This one is dangerous. I'm happy we just got singles of this bad boy.
Yeah.
Because like if I had like a 4-pack of these in my cooler right now, it'd be ugly.
I'm just trying to figure this beer out. Most hazies, I'm thinking you got lots of pineapple flavor or you got lots of citrus flavor. But on this one, I'm not getting either of those on the taste on this thing.
The taste of this beer, I can tell you everything that it's not, but it's really hard to tell you what it is. I mean, it's very low hoppiness. Mm-hmm. Like really, really low hoppiness. I get no maltiness. Mm-mm. I do get a subtle melon flavor.
Yeah, a little melon. I get a little spice too. Like there's just a little bit of kick on this thing.
I actually get that too. Like it's an earthy spice to it.
Well, I enjoyed it. What is your rating going to be on this beer?
So my rating is going to be a 4.0.
A 4.0.
A 4.0.
Well done, sir.
And I really enjoyed this IPA. I will definitely look for another beer with South African hops because I thought it was really good.
It's a great change-up beer.
It's
in the world of citrus haze after citrus haze in that fridge, you pull this out, it's like, hey, change that shit up a little bit.
Absolutely. And so what are you thinking on the rating?
I'm thinking today, I'm going to cheers you, sir. 4.0 across the board.
Copycat.
It's all right, but I'll cheers you for that. Woo. That was a loud cheers. All right, so I am glad that y'all got to come with us behind the scenes on the Beering Ain't Easy podcast. We may bitch at each other a lot, but you can tell we have fun doing it. And so in closing...
Don't even try.
I'm going to close you out.
So today, you heard us talk about our roles and responsibilities.
Adam tries to look so serious when he's closing
And
the episode.
the primary responsibility that I fulfill is closing this historic podcast. And so we will see you next time.
This has been a Beering Ain't Easy production at the Sesh Co-working Podcast Studio in Houston, Texas. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you want to see what we're drinking, our untapped handles are Beering Ain't Easy Adam and Beering Ain't Easy Drew.